When we talk about modern infantry rifles and battlefield performance, one number often defines their real-world capability more than any other: effective range. Today, we're focusing on a critical distance that has shaped modern combat doctrine across the world: an effective range of approximately 500 to 600 meters. But what does effective range really mean? It's not just about how far a bullet can travel. A rifle round can travel several kilometers depending on angle and environment. Effective range is different. It refers to the maximum distance at which a weapon can reliably hit a target with sufficient accuracy and stopping power to achieve its intended military purpose. In simple terms, it's the distance at which a trained soldier can consistently engage and neutralize a target. In the case of many modern assault rifles chambered in intermediate cartridges such as 5.56 x 45 mm NATO or 5.45 x 39 mm, that effective range typically falls within 500 to 600 meters. This range wasn't chosen randomly. It is the result of decades of battlefield data, ballistic science, and practical combat experience. Let's break it down. First, consider the concept of modern infantry engagements. Studies from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and later conflicts showed that most firefights occurred at distances well under 600 meters. In fact, the majority took place within 300 meters. Long-range engagements beyond 600 meters were relatively rare for standard infantry units. That insight fundamentally changed how militaries designed rifles and ammunition. Before World War II, many service rifles were full-powered battle rifles chambered in cartridges like .3006 or 7.92 x 57 mm Mauser. These rounds were capable of accurate fire beyond 800 meters. However, they produced heavy recoil, required heavier rifles, and reduced ammunition capacity per soldier. In fast-moving combat situations, especially in urban or jungle environments, such long-range capability was often unnecessary. As warfare evolved, militaries realized that a lighter, controllable rifle optimized for mid-range engagements would give soldiers a greater advantage. This led to the development of intermediate cartridges and assault rifles designed specifically around that 500 to 600 meter effective envelope. At 500 to 600 meters, several ballistic factors come into play. Bullet drop becomes significant. Wind drift becomes a serious factor affecting accuracy. The shooter must compensate for gravity, wind speed, and target movement. Even slight miscalculations can result in a miss. That's why training and optics are critical at these distances. Modern rifles equipped with advanced optics, such as magnified combat sights, red dot systems combined with magnifiers, or low-power variable optics, dramatically increase the probability of hits within this effective range. Optical advancements have made 500 meters far more manageable for the average infantry soldier compared to earlier iron sight-only eras. Another key factor is terminal effectiveness. A round must not only hit the target but deliver enough energy to incapacitate. At 500 to 600 meters, velocity begins to drop significantly depending on barrel length and ammunition type. Designers carefully balance bullet weight, velocity, and ballistic coefficient to ensure that sufficient energy remains at that distance. For example, a standard 5.56 x 45 mm NATO round fired from a 14.5-inch barrel, like that of an M4 style carbine, may have an effective range closer to 500 meters for point targets. From a longer 20-inch barrel, like older service rifles, that range may extend towards 600 meters. Barrel length directly influences muzzle velocity, which in turn affects effective range. Environmental conditions also play a major role. High altitude, temperature, humidity, and wind all influence bullet trajectory. In mountainous terrain, thinner air can slightly extend range. In strong crosswinds, accuracy at 500 meters can degrade dramatically without proper compensation. Now let's look at the human factor. Hitting a stationary target at 500 meters on a range is very different from engaging a moving adversary under stress. Combat stress affects breathing, trigger control, and decision-making. That's why the effective range rating assumes a trained soldier operating under realistic but controlled conditions. In chaotic environments, practical engagement distances often shorten. It's also important to distinguish between point targets and area targets. A point target might be an individual enemy soldier. An area target could be a group of enemies or a larger objective. Effective range for area targets may extend slightly further because precision requirements are reduced. Many militaries compensate for the limitations of standard infantry rifles at longer distances by integrating designated marksmen into squads. These soldiers carry rifles optimized for greater accuracy and range, sometimes extending engagement capability to 700 or even 800 meters. This layered approach ensures that the unit can handle threats across varying distances. The 500 to 600 meter effective range has shaped global military doctrine. It influences training standards, qualification courses, and even battlefield formations. Infantry units are trained to maneuver within this engagement envelope, using suppressive fire, bounding movements, and coordinated assaults. Suppressive fire is particularly important. Even if every round does not hit its target at 500 meters, accurate suppressive fire forces the enemy to take cover, limiting their ability to return effective fire. Control of that mid-range space often determines the outcome of small unit engagements. Technology continues to evolve. Modern fire control systems, ballistic calculators, and smart optics are gradually extending practical engagement distances for ordinary soldiers. Some advanced optics can automatically calculate bullet drop and provide aiming adjustments. However, the fundamental concept of effective range remains rooted in physics and human capability. Another critical aspect is ammunition weight. Intermediate cartridges allow soldiers to carry significantly more rounds compared to older full-power battle rifle ammunition. This increases sustained combat effectiveness. A lighter cartridge means more ammunition, faster movement, and reduced fatigue, all of which enhance battlefield survivability within that 500 to 600 meter envelope. Urban combat further reinforces the importance of this range. In cities, engagement distances are often far shorter, sometimes under 200 meters. However, open areas, rooftops, and long streets can extend engagements toward the upper limits of effective range. A rifle optimized for 500 meters provides versatility in both rural and urban terrain. Let's also address misconceptions. Effective range does not mean maximum lethal range. A bullet fired from a standard assault rifle can travel well beyond 2,000 meters under ideal conditions. However, accuracy and terminal performance at those extreme distances are not reliable enough for consistent military use. That's why effective range is the standard metric. Training at these distances builds confidence and capability. Many armed forces require soldiers to qualify at 300, 400, and sometimes 500 meters. Mastery at 600 meters often separates average shooters from highly skilled marksmen. As warfare increasingly integrates drones, sensors, and precision-guided systems, some might argue that individual rifle effective range is becoming less important. Yet, ground combat still depends on infantry controlling terrain. When soldiers encounter enemy forces directly, that 500 to 600 meter capability remains crucial. Looking ahead, future developments in ammunition, such as improved projectile design, polymer cases, and enhanced propellants, may slightly extend effective ranges without increasing recoil. New rifle platforms are also being developed to improve lethality and performance at longer distances. However, trade-offs always exist between recoil, weight, controllability, and ammunition capacity. In summary, an effective range of approximately 500 to 600 meters represents a carefully calculated balance. It reflects historical combat data, ballistic science, soldier performance, and logistical practicality. It is far enough to dominate typical battlefield engagements, yet close enough to maintain controllability and ammunition efficiency. Understanding effective range helps us appreciate how modern infantry weapons are engineered, not for theoretical maximum distance, but for realistic, repeatable combat performance. It explains why assault rifles look and function the way they do today. It shows how doctrine, technology, and human capability intersect. So the next time you hear that a rifle has an effective range of 500 to 600 meters, remember, that number represents decades of lessons learned on battlefields around the world. It's a balance between power and precision, range and realism, engineering and experience. And in modern warfare, that balance can make all the difference.